Here we are. Welcome back to the Redshirt Sophomore, where we never sit out. We're your hosts, ND and CD. I mean, we're coming off a Week 7 slate that night slate was probably the best slate that we've had in individual time slot in a while. That was unreal. You had overtime games, you had top 5 matchups, you had barn-burning, high-scoring football games if you were watching G5 in the nighttime slate. It was great football on Saturday, and we're here to recap a lot of this. So, look, if you want to hear, if you're here and you want to stick around, please do. All right, like the video if you like the content. Subscribe if you want to be here for more previews, more recaps, more college football. We've got it here, and yeah, I guess we'll recap some of the games that we didn't necessarily preview. We'll talk about our best bets and our dirty dogs, which, by the way, we hit another one, another 10-point underdog, smacked and won outright. We are going nuclear with those picks. And then, of course, we'll recap the games we previewed individually. So, CD, how are we doing? I mean, your Gophers came back, won a big game there.
Very relieved, excited for our bye week next week because it's been a long September and early November or early October. Obviously, getting the wins the past couple weeks been awesome. But yeah, in college, you said it, man. That night slate was awesome, but all day was great. I mean, it started early, Alabama, South Carolina, in an incredible game, entertainment wise, swings, penalties, drama, everything that you won in a college football game. It had storyline, right? It was awesome, front, top to bottom. I mean, this is what you get in college football, man. This is you get the greatest sport on earth, and we're so happy. You guys are here watching with us. We're so happy to be able to be doing this, continue to put out work for you guys, and yeah, it's been awesome.
Well, we'll get started. We'll just talk about some games. We'll throw out. I'll start. All right, I'll start in the Big Ten. Okay, Iowa, man. Iowa looked really good. What does Caleb Johnson have to do to get his name in the conversation for the Heisman? This is the rest of their schedule, by the way, and this is a guy who's averaging 8 yards a carry, and he doesn't have as many yards as Ashton Genty, but he's been awesome. All right, he's been awesome. Plays Michigan State, Northwestern, Wisconsin, UCLA, Maryland, and Nebraska the rest of the way. Iowa has one Big Ten loss, and that is to Ohio State, who now has a loss against Oregon. Iowa, man. All of a sudden, Iowa, man.
Yeah, let me say that. I'll echo all you said, but also just the Big Ten West in general. RIP to the Big Ten West. We love that division. I love that division. Obviously, my Gophers been there for a while now. But yeah, you talked about Iowa, obviously Caleb Johnson, and that impact is going to happen the rest of the year, potentially with their schedule, like you said. Absolutely. We'll be probably talking about them later on with some meaningful games coming up. Northwestern on Friday night, putting up 37, right?
Yeah.
How about which is awesome. How about Illinois and Purdue, 49 and 50 points in an overtime game? Great comeback, controversial fumble potentially, but regardless, though, a lot of high-firing points there. Wisconsin put up 42. Minnesota had a game-winning drive in LA across the country. Nebraska was on bye week, but yeah, I mean, it was awesome. The RIP, the Big Ten West, they look great. It was awesome to see some actual scoring between those programs.
Which we didn't get when they were in a division altogether.
Not at all.
Oh well, I guess. Oh well. But back to Iowa here. I mean, you're 4-2 right now, okay, and you have the schedule that I said remaining the rest of the way. I know you don't have the tiebreaker against Ohio State, right? Oregon's still undefeated in the Big Ten. Penn State's still undefeated in the Big Ten. Is there a situation where Iowa wins out? Is it very likely that if Iowa wins out here, that they make it to the Big Ten championship?
I mean, for sure. I mean, first of all, a lot of these teams, and we saw Ohio State, we thought they were invincible, and they looked pretty vulnerable, especially in the second half. And we'll talk about the game later on. We did our own preview on that. We'll get to those recaps in a little bit, in the individual, a little bit more deep dive into those games. But yeah, you got Nebraska, right, after your bye, Penn State, who's looking pretty good, Indiana all of a sudden, and of course that game, the game in Michigan at the end of absolutely was Oregon could lose as well. Ohio State needs to lose one more time. Indiana, I think no one's rooting for it, but I think everyone's kind of waiting for, okay, when is this run going to end? And it may never, but regardless, so to be the Big Ten kind of got broken wide open yesterday, and there's a lot of interesting games. Now, I do think there are a lot better teams than other teams, for sure. Is Iowa the second best team in the Big Ten? No, but with the way that it breaks down, and the way that the divisionless games are and the divisionless conferences are, scheduling matters. When you play people matters, all that other good stuff. And they're peaking right now. We saw that against Washington. Yeah. Why not? Why not Iowa?
All right, I'll let you pick the next game you want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of good games. Man, I don't even know where to start. I'll just say real quick, Clemson continues to look very good offensively, right? I mean, obviously that second quarter kind of exploded with some turnovers and whatnot, but regardless, they're capitalizing on those. They're kind of, getting back to the Clemson that we're used to. And with the way Miami's looked, with the way Louisville's looked, and some other teams in the ACC, Clemson is right there, obviously, like we thought they would be earlier in the season, continuing to compete, continuing to get better and better. And yeah, it's been awesome to see. And they're going to have some big games coming up. They're going to have some opportunities to win some big football games and potentially make a push for the ACC and playoff spot there.
Yeah, 1,000%. I mean, they look a lot better than Miami right now. 100%. I know you got a future still rolling with Clemson to win the ACC. That looks really stinking good right now. And when I'm looking at the other teams in the ACC, aside from Miami, you're just not super impressed, right? It's a lot of I'm not going to call it slop, but it's a lot of comparable teams. And then you just have that tier one where I think Miami can compete with Clemson for sure on any given Saturday. They do have a lot of stuff that they have to clean up, though. They can't be starting slow, right? And just letting Phil Maffa then, do his thing, milk and clock late in the game. So that'll be an interesting. They don't play each other in the regular season, so if they do play each other, it will be a matchup in the ACC championship, and Cam Ward will potentially be fighting for Heisman votes in
Yeah,
that
well,
game.
yeah. Well, let's say the ACC. Real quick. I hate to step on your toes here, but Pitt, Cal. How about Pitt, man? 6-0. I mean,
Dude,
isn't that
what is going on? Their over on win total was 5.5, and they're 6-0. Look, should they be 6-0? I
they
don't
find
know,
they find ways to win? That's what I'll
but they
say.
are. But they are 6-0. Okay, and I'm still not impressed with them, right? And Eli Holstein played his worst game of the season by far. That was not that I think this is what he is. I think he actually has been a really good quarterback, and I'm willing to take back the things that I said about him going into the season, where I thought he might not be an effective quarterback. But Cade Bell, the offensive coordinator that they hired from Western Carolina, has been magnificent. You lose Bub,
Mm-hmm.
right? And now all of a sudden Desmond Reed is your running back. That's good. You thought it was going to be Rodney Hammond going into the season, or at least I did. And all of a sudden, Eli Holstein going in the quarter. I mean, I put on a pic on Twitter the second that Pitt announced that Eli Holstein was going to be the starting quarterback. I absolutely hammered the other side of that because I didn't think Eli Holstein was a good quarterback into the season. And you know what? They didn't need him to be amazing in this game to win this football game, showing us that maybe they can win in more ways than one. So their defense has been fine. Their offense has been good. Moving forward, I'm looking at. I haven't looked at the rest of their schedule, but they're a top 15 team in scoring offense. Their pass defense has been pretty terribly metrically, but they can always play from behind because their run defense has been spectacular. I really like what they've done in the front seven there. I mean, Narduzzi, it's not going to have a Pitt team that isn't gritty there in the trenches. So I'm yeah, I'm not all in on this Pitt team yet, but do you have their schedule pulled up the rest of the way?
Yeah, so they get a bye week next week, I believe, and then they get kind of a little bit more challenging schedule in the back half. Syracuse, and the way they're playing right now offensively, SMU on the road in early November, and then you get Virginia, Clemson at home, Louisville on the road, and you finish with the fighting Bill O'Briens and Boston College on the road there. Yeah, I mean, I will say I was impressed with like you said, the other ways that they can win, not just with Eli Holstein coming back from behind or whatever it's been, right? But don't get discouraged too. Cal has done this to a lot of teams this year. Justin Wilcox is a very sharp defensive mind. They have a lot of talent and explosive playmakers on that defense. And we saw them do that to Auburn, put them in a blender. They had FSU in a blender on the road. They had Miami in a blender for one half until Cam Ward just took over. And then
Three
obviously,
quarters, actually. They had them in a blender for 3 quarters.
yeah, okay, let's say 3 quarters there. And obviously going on the road again to Pitt. Poor California, though. So many times they've crossed the country, right? Crossing that Mississippi, doing multiple time zones. and just coming up so short. Could very easily be 6-0. Could very easily be looking at a legit contender in the ACC, as instead they're 0-3 right now. I still feel okay with them right the rest of the way. I think their schedule eases up a little bit. I think they've got a lot of winnable games on the back half here. If you can settle down, get some healthy guys, get Jay not healthy, being able to start run the ball consistently, I think you help Mendoza, you help the defense, and being able to help traveling across the country too. You can bring your defense, you can bring your rushing game. That will really help as you get into, your Wake Forest and SMU as you come back. But for now, they got to figure it out.
I'm going to give the MAC some love here. More so, what the heck is going on, dude, in the MAC? Buffalo is 2-0, Ohio's 2-0, Western Michigan 2-0 after, maybe a little bit of a tighter game than Western Michigan was hoping for. You say pretty terrible football team. Yeah, Bowling Green's 1-1, Toledo's 1-1. Toledo dropped to Buffalo. We'll talk about that game more, I guess, in your best bets segment, because I know you were on Toledo in that game. Bowling Green dropping one to Northern Illinois, and they looked horrible offensively. And I don't know if this is just because Northern Illinois has made some teams look pretty bad offensively, but Northern Illinois is also a team that dropped to Buffalo. Buffalo, man.
Maybe Buffalo's good, man. Maybe.
They're 4-2 right now. And Pete Lembo, and I should know. I should just know better that Pete Lembo wins in the MAC. He wins. When he was at Ball State, by the way, he's the only Ball State head coach in the last, I think that's 40, 45 years that has come out of Ball State with a winning record.
Yeah.
Not only does he do it at a terrible program, right? He knows how to win in the MAC. Buffalo moving forward, man, is kind of scary. But yeah, Bowling Green, man. I don't know. I do not know what's up with them right now. I mean, you played a game against Akron where, frankly, you could have lost. You play up to your competition against Texas A&M and Penn State and look awesome offensively and explosive. I don't know. I don't know what's going on, dude. I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Connor Bazelak looked terrible. Didn't even reach 100 yards in that game. I don't know how to explain this, right? And maybe Northern Illinois is just really good. And maybe Buffalo is also really good, because I was a little bit down on Northern Illinois. I know they beat Notre Dame, but we talk about Notre Dame's offense being so stagnant at times that, like, they can lose literally any given week because of how bad that offense can sometimes play. But maybe Northern Illinois is good. Or maybe Bowling Green is just not what we thought it was going to be. I mean, Harold Fannin, it was a little inefficient day for him. 9 targets, 4 receptions. He did have a touchdown, but I don't know, dude. This MAC race, it's going to start getting crazy. I have no idea who's going to. I think there's like 6 or 7 teams that could come out of this MAC and win this. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, November is going to be awesome. And the reason why I say that is that's when action starts. You're talking about Tuesdays and Wednesdays, just having incredible matchups, obviously very, very fun and meaningful in the MAC, and obviously potentially the playoff race, depending on which teams start making their way towards the top of the G5. I'm going to move over to the SEC here, and the worst team in the SEC and one of the favorites to win the SEC in Georgia. So Mississippi State went on the road to Georgia and gave them a lot more than I think people thought they were going to. That line was 34.5. And it was, what, a 10-point game going into the fourth quarter? Mississippi State kind of surged in that third quarter, second half. And yeah, I mean, ETN punched it in there to kind of extend the lead, right? And kind of put it out of reach for the most part. But you got to give them credit. Is this a little concerning for Georgia? They got Texas next week, who obviously looked fantastic. Yeah, I'm with you here.
Very concerned about this secondary. Very concerned. You had a ton of depth pieces transfer out of there, and there's some young pieces. There's some superstars in that secondary, but it's whatever it is, it's not working, right? And you lose. Well, you added a really good defensive backs coach to your squad, but you also lost Fran Brown, right? Like, how much of an impact is that having?
Yeah.
In this situation, like, you thought you were replacing an A+ with an A+, or is this just like more? You thought you were more talented than you actually are? Like Texas, I have a feeling is I know Isaiah Bond was a little bit shaken up in this Oklahoma game, and I don't know his status moving forward for Texas, but this Georgia secondary is not what we've seen from Georgia secondaries. I'm very concerned.
No, to have right, obviously Kirby Smart, who's a defensive backs guy himself. T. Rob there, like you said, coming over from Alabama. Glenn Schumann, very very good defensive mind, and then obviously you got Will Muschamp still on that staff. I think has taken a smaller role, but regardless, it's interesting. It is interesting. Something to keep a note. I think we saw Bama scheme up some big time plays and also have a guy like Ryan Williams just make plays against your very talented and very good, secondary players as well. But it is concerning to see a couple games in a row now where you've seen it. You've seen it here, and for Georgia, they got to get it fixed because Texas looks fantastic. But that's also college football, man. These are 18 to 22-year-old kids who are just trying to figure it out. Sometimes it takes a while for them to get it right. Sometimes they're not on their A game every single game. And sometimes they have a slip up here and there and a couple plays here and there give, the opposing team an advantage or some momentum, whatever it may be. But we also got to give, I think, Mississippi State some credit too. Picking themselves off the mat, right? Going down big, not big early, but kind of going down early on the road after losing 5 straight. Could have very easily thrown in the towel. And Michael Van Buren, right? All those guys there on Mississippi State, Jeff
Right, Jeff
Lebby.
Lebby.
Yeah, like they're fighting. They're fighting. That's what this year is going to be about. Unfortunately, for the Bulldogs, it's not really about making the playoffs or making a bowl game. It's about building for the future, establishing a culture. Keeping buy-in. By the way, you're fighting and losing close games potentially. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be one of those years, unfortunately. But listen, got to give him credit for that.
Yeah, Dalen Everett, Julian Humphrey struggled a little bit in that cornerback room. I think KJ Bolden's been really good. I really
Yeah,
do. As that true freshman there, I think Malachi Starks is doing Malachi Starks thing. I think it's more in that cornerback room that you're hurting. You're hurting pretty bad, and you lose Green or Nyland Green to Purdue, who transferred out of there. You lose AJ Harris to Penn State. Uh, I'm not sure if those guys are actually being world beaters over there in the Big Ten, but at least competitive depth pieces. I don't know. Sometimes it can raise the floor of your room. I'm not trying to say that that's the reason or not the reason that Georgia secondary is not good right now, but a little bit of food for thought. Speaking of food for actually, no, I'm not going to go to that game. I'm going to talk about let's no see like we a lot of these games we had a lot of money on, so we'll go to Louisiana App State. Louisiana continues to look awesome, dude. They are a competitor in the Sun Belt. Of course, James Madison, got off the mat and did their thing against Coastal and made them look just like an absolute piece of poop. And we'll get to ULM when we get to your best bets because they look really good and it is wild. ULM, Louisiana, and James Madison right now and Texas State. I think are the 4 players in the Sun Belt that I've kind of seen single themselves out as potential contenders to win this thing.
Yeah, we'll see about Georgia Southern. I do think they're beating up on some of the bottom of the Sun Belt, and they have some good losses. We'll talk about Ole Miss, obviously, and Boise State in week 1. But yeah, I'm with you here. Louisiana continues to impress me. UL Monroe continues to impress me, and very, very happy about their success this week for sure. It's going to be an awesome Sun Belt. Last year, you had a ton of competitors. They had like 10 double-digit bowl games, right, with bowl teams. It might be like that this year, but I think the top half is going to be a little bit more competitive than it was last year because you had, your JMU and App State, and that was kind of it. But like you said, there's about 4 teams here that could really 4 to 5 teams that could really make a run in October and November and really be competing for that one spot there or the one spot in each division for the title there. Yeah, that was awesome. Glad you brought that one up. Move to the Big 12 here. Cincinnati over UCF. UCF continues to struggle in the Big 12. 1-2, disappointing start for them. They're 3-3 on the year after that loss to Florida. I think that was a week ago, maybe. I'm kind of getting my weeks mixed up. But Cincinnati continues to just grind out some victories. I'm been happy with how they're playing. I really am. I mean, they got a couple close losses to teams that are playing really well in their respective conferences. Pitt obviously doing their thing in the ACC, and Texas Tech, continuing to stack wins in the Big 12. Cincinnati is going to give teams a lot of trouble, and their back half of their schedule little bit more difficult than their first half, for sure. We talked about that, back in August. We were like, hey, they got to get out to a hot start because you don't know what's going to happen there in October and November, where you've got your, West Virginias, your Iowa State, Kansas States, and now all of a sudden Arizona State and Colorado are looking pretty formidable as well. But big win for them over UCF, kind of doing it in a little bit different way. We saw Sorsby just be gritty, gritty, and we loved him. We thought that was a big time pickup in the portal for them, and it's really proven to be that. So credit Scott Satterfield, credit this Bearcat team for fighting and continuing to play well in the Big 12 this year.
Yeah, we'll see if UCF continues to move with Ja'Cory Brown moving forward. I thought he played well in that first quarter, but yeah, just as the game went on, it's like it's really evident that he doesn't throw the ball very well. He was very explosive on the ground. He did his work in that aspect, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see what each of these teams have moving forward. Obviously, probably not contenders in the Big 12, but definitely not UCF. Definitely not UCF. But we'll see there. I'll go over. Man, do we want to talk about the military schools right now?
We got it, man. We got to.
Because Army and Navy are just blowing out teams right now. Just blowing out teams. I don't think Navy played this week, but Army played. They absolutely murdered UAB. UAB is on an absolute just descent beyond. And you know what? You know what's hilarious about that? Brian Vincent from ULM was the interim head coach at UAB when they fired their last head coach, and he did well enough. I mean, Blaine McBride got drafted. And they're like, no, we're not going to hire you. We're going to go with this guy, Trent Dilfer, who has 0 college football coaching experience and loves yelling at kids on the sideline in high school football games. Brian Vincent is doing awesome. Trent Dilfer and this team has stunk, and all he has done is blame it on NIL and people coming in and taking his players. It is baloney. It is baloney. You can win football games in these conferences with lesser talent. You can do it. It is proven time and time again. You think Army's got the talent? You think Army's keeping people in their ball club with NIL? No. They just ran the ball absolutely all over you. And this is embarrassing right now for UAB. And Trent Dilfer should be on the hot seat. And I know it's only been 2 seasons, but I genuinely think it's bad enough to. And this is a program that's done really well in the last decade plus, really well. I think that after a couple losses being strung together like this, it kind of warrants a situation where you're like, okay, maybe this isn't the guy. I legitimately think it's hot seat. I don't normally say that about coaches after 2 years. I really don't. But this is really bad for UAB. But credit Army. They're playing awesome.
Yeah. I mean, Dilfer, it sounds like he doesn't want the job anymore. And if you don't want it, why even take it? Like, you knew it was going to be hard. Regardless, though, yeah, Army and Navy obviously doing work right now. The thing I want to hear about, and I kind of just thinking about it because who knows what's going to happen the rest of the way. Army and Navy play each other on the 14th of December, right? And that's the week before, I think, the playoff games are, or the first semifinal game. Like, there's a legit possibility. Both teams are ranked right now. Both teams are going to be competing, I think, for the American and also potentially that spot, in, your college football playoffs. So obviously a lot can happen the next 6-7 games, right? I get that. A lot can happen. But are they going to have to wait and to see what's going to happen there? Like, it could be bizarre. It could be really bizarre not knowing who you're going to play if you are, right, that 5 seed, potentially playing a 12 seed. It could be the winner of that Army-Navy game. Could be that spot there. So just really interesting. Thought I'd throw that tidbit out there because I hope it comes that. I really do.
Yeah, I think it might be a talking point down because I'm not seeing a lot of teams in the American that can compete with these guys. Like, really, I mean, Navy blew out Memphis. I think Army will run the ball. I think Army plays Memphis. I could be wrong. You might have to check that one for me. But these 2 teams are playing, so they don't play Memphis.
So Army has, a couple teams, the very, very winnable American schedule. So Army's already 5-0 in conference, by the way. But their out-of-conference games they still have to play is Air Force, right? Notre Dame, and then Navy at the end of the year. It's not really a conference game. So, but you get ECU in conference at North Texas, who's playing pretty good football right now, and then UTSA, who's not very good. So very winnable games in the American. It's going to be those service academy battles, and then Notre Dame. And Notre Dame, by the way, plays both Army and Navy. So you actually want to talk about potential resume builders for Notre Dame, right? It could be Army and Navy, and that could be the reason why potentially they make the playoffs there. Because we talked about their schedule, and USC is not looking great right now, and it's kind of hilarious. It's kind of hilarious how quickly things change.
Because I was talking about it a while ago, like that loss to Northern Illinois, I was like, that's it. That's the dagger. Should have known, because when you have losses early in the season, people forget about it.
People just forget about it.
But
so same reason Clemson, people forgot about them getting blown up by Georgia.
Yep, people forgot about that. People forget about stuff. All right, people are probably going to forget about Georgia losing to Alabama as well.
Yeah.
It's just going to happen. People are probably going to forget about Alabama losing to Vanderbilt. When Vanderbilt's ranked.
They're 9-3 and just staring down the SEC title game.
Yeah, so also helps. It makes for some really interesting dynamics as we're starting to see some of these teams play out. Do you want to bring up Rutgers?
I'll do it. I mean, I touched on the Big Ten West a little bit earlier, but yeah, I mean, Wisconsin 2 straight weeks now. Now Purdue's terrible, and don't let that Illinois score fool you. Purdue's terrible, but 2 straight weeks now. Braden Locke has looked pretty impressive. They've run the ball well. Kind of got a rotation going there. Got some playmakers kind of emerging, right? Kukahana or Ketchikana. Oh wow, Tretch Kekahana. I think that's how you say it. Regardless, he's kind of emerging. Obviously, we knew about Will Pauling as a guy there for them. Tyree Walker, a big-time portal get for him.
Yeah, especially with Des Malusi walking away. Tyree Walker, all of a sudden, instead of it being a luxury, it was a necessity.
Yes. And 2 straight weeks now, right? Ethan Kaliakmanis has been who Ethan Kaliakmanis has traditionally been, right, in the Big Ten there, where he's just struggled. And when too much is put on him, he's got to come from behind. I mean, if you're Wisconsin, you get out to that 14-0 start in that first half, it almost feels insurmountable, right? It just feels like such a big lead, and that's the Kirk Ciarrocca effect, right, for Rutgers. Obviously, just disappointing a couple weeks now for Rutgers, as they started with a couple big-time wins, with Virginia Tech and Washington, and now obviously Nebraska and Wisconsin, 2 straight, tough losses there or disappointing losses. And their schedules is still very winnable games. It's going to be like that for them. I'm not going to throw them away. I'm not going to just count them off as a bottom feeder in the Big Ten. I think they can absolutely make a bowl game, potentially 7-8 wins there. And then for Wisconsin, right, this looks like a much different team than they did against Alabama and USC. I think Braden Locke is kind of getting into his own. Good to see some confidence there. Rutgers, by the way, pretty good defense too. So it's not like he's doing it against, Purdue. It's Rutgers as well on the road. They have a tough schedule to the end there. Penn State, Iowa, Oregon, Nebraska, and obviously the Axe game there at home versus Minnesota in end of November. So they got a lot to do, a lot of work to do. I think making a bowl game 7 wins would kind of be pretty successful, especially with TVD going out. So, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts from it. Anything different for you?
No, the last, I guess, set of games I want to bring up, and I'm not going to touch a lot on it. I just want to point out Western Kentucky Sam Houston on Wednesday is huge, right? Because Liberty looks vulnerable. They went to overtime with FIU. If you didn't catch that weekday game on that, I believe it was
Tuesday.
Oh, it was Tuesday. That's right. It was really early in the week. If you didn't catch that game, Liberty looks vulnerable. Sam Houston, Western Kentucky. That is a gigantic game. That's in Huntsville. Sam Houston is hosting Western Kentucky. Both teams look really good right now. The winner of that is going to set themselves up really nicely to make the CUSA championship. And with Liberty looking vulnerable, I think that game just became a lot more important. So just wanted to point that out. So if you didn't know that was coming up on weekday, Wednesday football, you should be tuning in that one, because that's a big deal in that conference. 2 undefeated teams in their conference, right? I mean, Western Kentucky's 4-2. Sam Houston, I think, is 5-1, 4-1. So, but yeah, let's move on. Let's talk about. Let's get into our dirty talks. I mean, what are we doing again? Another smacker Rooney Vanderbilt plus 440. And you know what? I reluctantly put them on there. And the funny thing is if Buffalo had actually scooted up to 10, but when we were recording this, I would have taken Buffalo over Vanderbilt. But it actually ended up being better value for Vanderbilt plus 440 there, even though both of them would have cashed. Yeah, I mean, Florida, I also had. So my picks, I had Florida plus 500. That was my first pick. I mean, we could talk about woulda, coulda, shoulda. That was just a brutal game in which people argue about this all the time, like whether or not it's beneficial to go for two in that situation to make it go to overtime. I think if you have a dynamic quarterback and you have one chance from the 2 yard line to potentially win the game
On the
right
road,
there
on the
on the
road.
road, when you are a 15-point underdog, I think you absolutely do it. I think in the situation with LSU, I think you're okay kicking the extra point because you had a lot of momentum and you were as talented, if not more talented, than in certain aspects, in certain areas of your team than Ole Miss. Two different situations, two different, I think, incomparable situations.
Yeah, I'm
I think you
with you
absolutely
there.
go for two. I think you absolutely go for two.
And like, it's also not only is he dynamic, but he's young too, and so like
Don't let him go to overtime.
consistently putting together a drive, like it's going to be tough, right? And that, yes, 25 seems great, but we saw him, and it's not that easy to just. It's not an auto field goal. It's not.
No.
And yeah, I'm with you there. Obviously, you had the momentum early on, right? You should have put him away, and you didn't. Graham Mertz get hurt, and all of a sudden Tennessee gets hot there. You battle back. He makes a heck of a play. DJ does on 3rd and 18, right? Steps up in the pocket, throws an absolute strike. Yeah, go for it. Go for it. I know there's a little bit of time left, so I know it wasn't like, an auto win, right? It wasn't the last play of the game, but I still think with 30 seconds to go, you feel good with the way Nico was playing that you probably win that football game if you get that. And the odds are it's like 55%, right? So whatever it is to get a 2-point conversion, right? It's more than 50%. And I think you go to overtime, I think your odds absolutely less than 50%. So like
plummet.
Especially with the way Tennessee was playing in that second half. Regardless, though, it sucks for Billy Napier. I mean, it's year 3, so we shouldn't be handing out moral victories for them, but I guess it was good to see them, pick themselves off the mat and fight, right, this past couple weeks. This win would have been massive, though. Massive. Oh, but again, coulda, shoulda, woulda. I like that you were on that. Mine were terrible, and I'm just going to get them out of the way here. Stanford, who went up 7-0, by the way. And then Riley Leonard, they actually let Riley Leonard throw the ball on them. They gave up 49 unanswered. Leonard looked actually good, competent throwing the football. They ran for 220 plus. Notre Dame did. So, yeah, that was tough. And I liked it because, one, I didn't like the slate. And I didn't like the slate. And I didn't like Vanderbilt either, by the way. Actually, here's what I'll say. I had two of the teams that were the dirty dogs this week that actually cashed were Buffalo and Vanderbilt. Right? And I bet against both of them. So I wasn't going to be taking Toledo, or I wasn't going to be taking Buffalo to win and while I'm, betting on Toledo. And I wasn't going to take
Buffalo wasn't a 10-point spread either. It was 9.5.
But it closed. It closed at 10.
But when we recorded it, right?
Exactly.
When we were making these picks, it wasn't there. But if it had been at 10, I would have actually taken it. Would have faded you again, and then I would have been
3-0 against me as we're
3-0 when you bet on a team and I take a dirty dog against it.
I should know. But regardless, and then my second one was the Red River shootout. Texas, just OU had a chance early in that game to establish some momentum and go up, right, score some points, score some touchdowns because they were not going to be able to sustain drives. Kirk Herbstreit was saying the entire game, they're not going to sustain drives, and they didn't. They couldn't, and they turned the ball over, and Texas capitalized in that second quarter, and it blew the door open. Once it was, a over 10-point lead, it felt really insurmountable, and it was. I was surprised we didn't see, and I guess we'll get in that game more because we did preview that, so I won't say too much. But
Vanderbilt plus 440 cashed against Kentucky. That puts our record for the season. We are 6-22, which you're like, well, that's not a good record. But yeah, if you were to bet these money line, which we don't, okay, I want to specify that. Well, some of them I do. But yeah, you'd be up 3.05 units on the year, just tailing our dirty dogs, 10-point underdogs, and we're taking it to win outright. I haven't even done the math and like what it is, like if you were to take them to cover. I gotta do that one time and see like just our dirty dogs are covering at an unreal rate. But yeah, Diego Pavia, I don't know if I've already made this point before, but you got a separate scale. There's like elite quarterbacks and there's like terrible quarterbacks. You got a separate scale of a friskiness factor where there's just, zero frisk all the way to, gamer and frisky. Like frisky and then gamer. Diego Pavia, I'm ready to say, is a gamer. All right, he got hurt, limped off the field, came back. Next possession, runs for like a 30-yard run. They literally ran with him. They ran like a power option. After he limped off the field last possession, they went right back to him, and he just like, yeah. And he just, dude, he's a gamer. This Vanderbilt team is kind of crazy, and they lose London Humphreys and Will Shepherd on offense. And, the year before they lost Ray Davis, who looked awesome at Kentucky. And all of a sudden, this Vanderbilt offense is just unreal. The Jerry Kill hire ended up being awesome as an analyst, best analyst hire in the country for sure. Diego Pavia has just been unreal. The defense showed up. Now, is the Kentucky offense really bad? Yeah, I'm kind of done with the Kentucky offense. I really am. But yeah, great work by Vanderbilt there. Probably the last time we're going to get Vanderbilt as a 10-point underdog in any game this season. The rest of the way,
they got Texas.
They do play Texas. But
and on the road at LSU, right? So we'll see. Listen, man, I will say this, and I feel pretty confident. Like Vanderbilt's going to give Texas more problems than Oklahoma did, and I don't think that's crazy. If you told me that early in the season, I would be like, "What?"
I would have said you're stupid. I would have been like, "That is a dumb take that you just had." But here we are.
Here we are. Yeah, like you said, that Vanderbilt staff, Diego Pavia, Tim Beck. I mean, it's been awesome, and they're running the ball well. They're playing. The defense looked good, man. A little opportunistic, which was nice. So. Big time stuff for Vanderbilt. I took Kentucky on the counter, and I felt good about it. It was more of a vibes play. I was like, listen, this Kentucky team, they're better than people think, right? I think they were coming off a bye. And Vanderbilt had obviously a big time win. Letdown spot was just enormous. Should have known better. Clark Lee was not going to let that happen. Credit to Vanderbilt, man. I love that. As someone that took Vanderbilt minus 2.5, or I'm sorry, over 2.5 wins on the season. Right, should have bought that up to 3.5. Should have bought it up to 4.5.
5.5.
Yeah, because holy cow, I'm all over Vanderbilt. Very happy to see them doing well. Did you see that comment that Mark Soups made about NIL, that Vanderbilt's NIL program?
I don't think that was true.
Okay, I got absolutely baited.
Yeah,
Ignore what I just said.
Well, he did say something about it wasn't Vanderbilt's NIL program, but it was about Kentucky's. I think that was fair. I think you got baited, but there was a while, like a couple of years ago, I think he talked about it, like where they had gotten killed by Georgia, and someone brought up his SEC record, and he's like, "Well, these guys have better NIL." It's like, well, hey, at least you have better NIL than Vanderbilt. And by the way, in the last 3 years, Kentucky is 1-2 against Vanderbilt. 1-2. But Mark Stoops was the head coach at Texas A&M for a couple hours there. So it's a big deal.
By the way, he does not get paid to win SEC football games. He gets paid to beat Southern Miss and make bowl games, Murray State and Louisville. Those are the games he gets paid.
No. He does get paid to beat Vanderbilt. All right. He gets paid to beat Vanderbilt. He does not get paid to beat Georgia. He doesn't get paid to beat Florida, which actually he's done a couple times. He doesn't get paid to beat Tennessee, Alabama, Texas A&M, South Carolina. He doesn't get paid to beat any of those teams. He gets paid to beat Vanderbilt, and like you said, the out-of-conference games, and then steal one SEC game to get you go to 6-6. So, yeah, pretty brutal there. Pretty brutal. Let's head over to the counter because you brought it up. Not a great week for me. Bad beat Central again. The second straight week I was on an under, and it just cashed in the fourth quarter. So my losses this week, I was 2-3. My losses: Wyoming plus 2.5. They lost by 2. Or sorry, they lost by 3. And really, they should have. They let San Diego State back in that game in the fourth quarter after they were up a touchdown. And it is what it is. It is what it is. Credit San Diego State. Credit Sean Lewis, because we know he's a good coach. USC Penn State under 50.5. Terrible read by me. Just garbage. Absolutely would take that one back in a heartbeat. BYU minus 4.5. That's a win. Cash. Love that. North Texas FAU over 59.5. I got bet down to 58. Like, what are we doing? That game soared over. I'm 2-0 in overs on the year, by the way. And I don't normally take overs. So just know. 2-0 in overs on the year. UTSA and Rice under 50.5. This one hurt. It took a 21-point fourth quarter and a touchdown with 4 seconds left in the game by Rice. Touchdowns on 3 of the last 4 possessions on the game for this over to cash. So that was tough for me. So I was 2-3, makes me 25-16 on the year. I'm still up 6.75 units, so still having a good year at the counter. Whereas you had a week. You had 9 total bets on this. You went 6-3. We'll go over the winners. Missouri minus 27.5, Syracuse minus 4.5, Georgia Tech minus 5.5. Bang! By the way, that was huge.
That was a big time goal line stop right there, by the way.
Yeah, big time goal line stop. Miami, Ohio minus 2.5, Memphis minus 7, ULM minus 6.5. Your losses: Toledo minus 9.5, which we already talked about, Kentucky minus 13.5, and Ohio State minus 3. And we'll talk about that game more. You went up 2.46 units on the week, which leaves you at 20-13 on the season, plus 5.2 units. Look, both of us had tough starts to the year, and we just bounced back, and we're cooking right now. So as a show, being up 12 units is pretty lovely between two of us through 7 weeks. So, CD, what did you like? What did you regret? Would you do the same?
Toledo on the road. Well, betting against Pete Lembo. We talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
Betting against Diego Pavia and Vanderbilt. Should have known that. And then honestly, the Oregon Ohio State game. I think you play that game again. A lot of outcomes could happen for sure. I don't hate that at all. That was my loss there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I bet against a ton. I bet on a ton of road favorites, and I was kind of terrified.
Yeah.
Kind of terrified, but it worked out for me. I feeling great. I am extremely hot since week 3. So starting week 4, I've been cooking, and love that's going to continue. So feel free to tell me if you want. If you win, you're welcome. If you lose, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Tail my dirty dogs. Actually, if you were to tail my dirty dogs, you would be up 17 units, by the way, which is crazy. Tail my dirty dogs and CD at the counter. That's what we should be doing. So good, solid week from us. Let's get into the games. First, I'll recap our picks just to know that how terrible we were this week. And we still have a winning record in our picking straight up winners and ATS department, but I was 3-5 picking winners, 1-7 ATS this week. Not good. By far my worst week in a long time. My first losing week in the ATS department of the season, I believe. Yeah, because I've only had 4-4. So that was my worst week by far. Did not see the board well. My losses: ATS, Utah, Bama, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Ole Miss, West Virginia, Kansas State. My only win: USC, plus 5.5. But the thing is, I also took them to win straight up, and they did not do that. So even my only win was a loss. Whereas you went 4-4, picking up straight up winners, 3-5 ATS. So your losers ATS were Utah, Oklahoma, Ohio State, Ole Miss, Kansas State. Your winners were you went 2-6.
Yeah, 2-6.
I actually counted Bama as a win for you. So you also lost the Bama game. And so here your only winners were Iowa State and USC. So not a great week from us. That puts me 34-23 on the year. Picking straight up winners. You're 35-22. Slight edge for you there. Picking straight up winners. ATS, I am 31-26 to your 30-27. So slight edge for me, ATS. Slight edge to you, picking straight up winners. I think that was actually the case last year. I think you had the edge on me picking straight up winners, and I had the edge on you picking the ATS. So yeah, let's just get into these previews right here. We'll talk about it. Utah, Arizona State, getting Cam Rising back. You know what? The urge. This is terrible of me. The urge for me to hammer Utah ATS when I knew that Cam Rising was going to play, it was large. All right. But I was like, you know what? It's on the road. It's Cam Rising's first game back in a couple of weeks. Arizona State's been playing good football. I like their front seven. We'll let this one ride out. And Arizona State absolutely took it to them. And Kenny Dillingham delivered a post-game interview unlike any other. The Sun Devils, I'm ready to say that they're a decent football team, man. They're a decent football team, and I would never have thought that heading into the season.
They're well coached, right? They have an identity. Obviously, Cam Scatterbo is a monster. Sam Leavitt makes some big time plays when he has to, and that defense, that front seven, was super physical. Super physical. I know there were a couple drives where Bernard really got going, but other than that, they were in Cam Rising's grill all night. They were not stopping the run on first down. They did all the things that we talked about that they had to do to get a win here. Awesome. You mentioned that post-game press conference. Why wouldn't you want to play for Kenny Dillingham, right? We talked about how they were going to have a big time overhaul. Here I am right now, October 13th, Sunday, doing this. They are ahead of schedule. They are ahead of schedule down there in Arizona. They are fantastic right now. I'm loving it. Loving the energy, the vibes right now. And for Utah, off a bye week, getting your starting quarterback back. And that's what you come out with?
Yeah.
Very un Kyle Whittingham like. Very un Utah like. 0-2 against your Arizona schools, right? Arizona and Arizona State. And by the way, if you told me that Arizona was going to struggle this year and Arizona State, I would have been surprised that these were the two losses on Utah's schedule so far, right? Especially after how good they looked early in the season with a healthy Cam Rising. We'll see. I'm not going to write them off. It's one game. It was on the road. Cam Rising looked awful. I don't think he's going to look like that the rest of the way. I have a feeling he gets his footing at some point, but he's got to find it fast. Otherwise, Josh Hoover and TCU are going to outscore him, and it's going to get real tough with BYU, Colorado, and Iowa State in November. So, yeah, I mean, absolutely surprised. I took Utah with Isaac Wilson, and by the way, I don't know if Isaac Wilson would have been an upgrade. Would have for sure not been an upgrade. I at least in this one game, right? Obviously, Cam Rising is their ceiling, right? He represents their ceiling in terms of how he plays and what they can do in the Big 12. But two conference losses for Utah. I'm not going to say it eliminates them, but the margin for error super slim. And with the way BYU, Iowa State, Texas Tech, and right now Kansas State is playing, and with the tiebreaker that Arizona State has on them, quite frankly, they're going to need some help. They're going to need some help with other teams to be able to get that spot and claim their spot in the Big 12 championship.
Yeah, I'm definitely concerned about this offense. I'm also concerned about what does this team look like after Cam Rising? Like, they might need to go into the portal and get someone like pretty solid because we've seen the drop off from Cam Rising to other players that play quarterback in this offense, and it is a significant drop off. Then you have a game like this where Cam Rising comes, plays, and he's healthy, and he lays a dud, and he's terrible, and they lose because of it. So if you had gotten plus play Cam Rising, they win this football game. They really do, but they didn't. So after this season, in a Big 12 where the power grab is real, Kyle Whittingham, they've already lined up, Morgan Scalley as like the replacement. Like what?
I was going to say
preparing to leave.
Kyle Whittingham's probably not going to have to deal with life after Cam Rising.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
I'm half joking, but listen, it did not, like 2 straight weeks now, very uncharacteristic of Utah. Very uncharacteristic.
Very. So, I mean, moving forward, Arizona State, I still don't think they're a player in the Big 12. You're 5-1, right? You're looking at, potentially a solid bowl game. You play Cincinnati on the road next week, which, by the way, is a tough game. Both of us believe here that Cincinnati is a good football team. Your only loss in conference was Texas Tech. And by the way, it's a close football game. The rest of your schedule, you got Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, UCF in the next 3 weeks. You can win all of those games. The issue comes at the end where you go on the road against Kansas State, on the road against BYU at home, who's playing unreal football right now, and then Arizona on the road. So it's actually competing for the Big 12 championship. I don't necessarily see Arizona State doing that, but Sam Levitt's been awesome. Cam Scadaboo's been great. This defense, Brian Williams, is that the name of this of the DC? I'm forgetting. Definitely Brian Ward.
Ward, yeah.
He's been unreal. I mean, these last 2 seasons with Arizona State, he has been unreal. Arizona State needs to find a way. Kenny Dillingham needs to find a way to keep him there because he has been absolutely awesome for them. So credit Arizona State, credit these Sun Devils, credit Sam Leavitt. Just all these guys, man. It's been so good, man. It's been so good. Let's move on. Let's talk about, Alabama. That defense. It's been kind of smelly. It's been kind of stinky. South Carolina gave him an absolute barn burner of a game right there. If it wasn't for Lenore Sellers, just kind of airmailing it there. South Carolina Absolutely could have won the game. People are talking about, oh, that play call at the goal line or the 2-point conversion. I don't know. I don't care that much about the play call. What matters, I think, here is moving forward for both of these teams. Alabama does not have it easy the rest of the way, especially if their defense is going to play that bad. Because we talked about, like, what does South Carolina need for their offense to produce? They need explosive plays, right? By the way, where's Nick Harbor been all season? And why do they just trust him all of a sudden on the last drive?
Here's what I'll say about him. Freak athlete, very high potential. I do not think he's like a good receiver yet, right? Like I think he's got like that's his play. He's 6'5", he's huge, and he's fast.
Runs a 10-1, 100 meter.
Go up and high point the ball. That's kind of his role in this offense here. Now, why they aren't doing it more? Because Sellers obviously has the arm. You need to create some kind of deep threat, some kind of way to push the defense back away from you, so you can get Sanders going, so you can get Sellers going, and Oscar Attaway as well, and open up room for your guys like Bennett and Jacobs and Larvadain, guys like that to be able to get over the middle. I don't know. It was awesome. Great catch. Big time spot. Good throw. Great throw. Yeah, I don't know why it's not more often, but like in terms of like him being like an actual like 8-catch, 120-yard guy, like not right now. That's not his game, but that is his game though. The vertical threat, go route, deep post, right, jet sweep, something like that. Get the ball in his hands and make him make plays because you're either going to get a penalty, potentially pass interference, or you give him a chance to make a play, and he's got a real good chance to do it.
So what's wrong with this Alabama defense right now?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think they're hurting themselves. Okay, right. I think the penalties you are seeing on third down, right, they are just really, really hurting what they can do, and for a team that's struggling to get off the field on third and especially fourth down, when you do make a stop, having stupid penalties, having roughing the passer here and there, like those things kill you, and you give teams chances to extend plays or whatever, or you get a chance where South Carolina was third and 18, right? Fourth and 9 on the touchdown to Bennett early, right? Their first touchdown was 4th and 9, and then that first drive coming out of half, 16 plays, 85 yards, took 8 minutes and 40 seconds off the clock. Right, you had 3rd and 6, and then you let Sellers get out of the pocket and scamper for a touchdown. 3rd and 15, Bennett got open again, 22 yards. These are things that you're not used to seeing, right, from Alabama historically, right? We saw some of that with Pete Golding. Some fans aren't just don't. It's not some new thing, but it is concerning because I think you're hurting yourself. And then secondly, too, and I love Milroe, and I love this offense. I love DeBoer, but the aggressive nature that they play, and that's their identity. I'm not going to question DeBoer about it, but I do think it puts their defense in tough spots at times, right? We saw when, Bama had the safety, right? And you give South Carolina good field position, and then you throw the interception and you give good field position. And yeah, I mean, you had the interception in the second half again, and then you obviously their defense made big time stops when you needed them to. I will say I was more impressed with their defense than I thought I was going to be, right? Like throughout the game, I was like, get off the field, don't do that penalty. But then it's like, looking back and digesting, it's like, they were put in some tough spots. They made some big time plays. They had obviously, Sellers missed the 2-point conversion, and it wasn't a great play defensively, but you got in his face. You got some kind of pressure going. And yeah, I don't know. I just think, I think it was a tough win. I think it was a tough win. Obviously concerning. They're not flawless. Absolutely not. But it also looks like a team that is figuring out a new coaching staff, a new coaching style, a new playbook, a new scheme, culture, all these other things. Like it's still year one. Yes, the players are talented, but yeah, that's my takeaway.
Well, Alabama, believe it or not, on third down is actually 23rd in the country in getting off the field on third down. But that stat doesn't include penalties. And I don't know what the stat is for third down penalties, but Alabama is 119th in the country, giving up 72 yards or 72.2 yards of penalties per game. So, yeah, the discipline there, I would definitely agree with you 100%. Yeah, I don't know because Georgia's kind of shredding everyone in the secondary right now. Vanderbilt, still is playing really well offensively, and they're really interesting, different offense, something that a lot of these SEC teams haven't really faced. And Tim Beck is just absolutely lighting it up over there, the OC for Vanderbilt. Yeah, I'm not out on this defense, but yeah, it's concerning for sure. I'm a little bit more concerned. Here's I'm more concerned about Georgia's secondary right now because of their matchup next week, right? Tennessee, their offense has struggled a lot. If you can stop the run like Bama has done all year, by the way. Bama's done a good job stopping the run. Now there were some explosive run plays in the Vanderbilt game, but I think generally it was the pass game that kind of sold you or like kind of lost you that football game. Those big explosive plays, those third down conversions, those uh I think that's what lost you the game against Vanderbilt. But the run defense has been really good. If you can shut down Dylan Sampson next week, then all of a sudden you still only have one SEC loss, and you still got a chance. You have your tiebreaker over Georgia, who also has an SEC loss and might have another one, coming up. I do think Alabama still, to a degree, they don't control their own destiny yet because Texas A&M uh, and Texas both haven't lost yet in the SEC, and they don't play either of those teams this year. But Alabama there's still a lot of their goals in front of them here, but like you said, I think playing a complementary offensive defense is important, and they're not really doing that in terms of like you said, these quick drives, not being able to run the ball that effectively, uh,
Turnovers.
turnovers, it hurts you a lot, and it hasn't been every game like that, but these last 2 weeks for Alabama, it certainly has feels like the offense has put the defense in bad situations as well. But yeah, the defense has not been good, but we could see it improve. We could, and like if they're getting off, also the other stat is teams are 70% on fourth down against Alabama, right? And also to Alabama being who they are, right? Teams are more inclined to go for it on fourth down, right, against a team like Alabama. And when you're giving up first down in 70% of opponents' fourth down plays, that doesn't help, right? That does not help. So yeah, still a lot to look forward to for Alabama moving forward. In terms of South Carolina, they still have a gauntlet schedule the rest of the way. Getting to a bowl game is going to be tough, and they're going to have to rely on that defense, and they're going to need to force turnovers, and Lenore Sellers needs to do a better job taking care of the football.
Yeah, I mean, this is another woulda, coulda, shoulda, right, for them. We talked about LSU, we talked about Alabama, and their games they had with them where you potentially outplayed them. You just put yourself in bad spots, right? Turnovers, penalties in this game, just lack of execution at times. It was tough. It was really tough, and obviously for South Carolina, if at the beginning of the year you're like, hey, we're going to take LSU and Alabama to the wire, right? Push them to the limits. You'd been like, yeah, absolutely. But again, like how you don't love moral victories, right? Shane Beamer doesn't love moral victories. Like it's about time you want to see some winning this year for them in these big time games, and they're gonna have plenty, like you said, moving forward. I think the Oklahoma game next week is really interesting because the way Oklahoma is struggling offensively and how good your front seven is. Now we'll see how Sellers does against another pretty damn good defense, especially in that front there for Oklahoma. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. Like you said, though, I was a little bit more encouraged. Sellers made some big throws on third downs, like big time throws, or even, second and longs, whatever it was, like throwing across the middle, finding some of these guys. Bennett is really emerging as a guy that's kind of go to on some big, obvious passing downs, and they're scheming up good things for him, and good things are happening. Sanders still missing some kind of juice, man. I know he wasn't always like the fastest burner, right, at Arkansas, but he used to have that get in the way speed, that second gear he could really get into, and you're just not seeing it. And also, by the way, those tackles for South Carolina, I know they're young, I know they're talented, and I know Bama, by the way, has a pretty good defensive line, and I think pass rush, edge rushers, they're pretty darn good. And also, like Kane Womack, throws blitzes at you. It was tough at times. Now they made some big time adjustments in that second half or maybe second quarter and moving on, where you were chipping, where you were finding creative ways to give Sellers some kind of time and ability to stand in the pocket and throw the ball. But when they know you have to throw the ball, holding up, right? A lot of things have to go right. This is why coaches love running the ball, by the way, because in order to complete a pass, a lot of things has to go right for you to be able to do it successfully and also consistently. So like that's the hard part, is being consistent all throughout your offense and sustaining drives with your pass attack, which is still obviously limited for South Carolina. Same thing for Oklahoma. Same things for a lot of teams in the SEC. But yeah, tough loss, frustrating. Good fight. They got down early and they just fought back. And yeah, it's a shame, but what can you do? They remind me real quick. They remind me of like the Georgia Tech of the SEC, right? And when I say that, I mean kind of reverse in terms of like Georgia Tech's offense is like super, super frisky, and it's going to keep them in certain games that they do not belong in, or just going to give opposing teams absolute nightmares. In the same way that South Carolina's defense does that. For we've seen LSU, we've seen Kentucky, obviously we saw Alabama, in certain things that they've done that have caused turnovers, caused absolute headaches for these opposing offensive coordinators and offensive staffs. Is that crazy to say? Is that crazy comment?
Yeah, I could say, like the Texas A&M teams in the last couple of years. I mean, you've had some issues on defense, but in terms from a pass rushing perspective, and forcing turnovers, you can change a game on its head. But Texas A&M obviously struggle on the offensive side of the ball the last couple of years. I guess I could also compare it to that, but I think it's unique because it is such extremes. I think because their defensive line and defense is so extremely good at causing those mayhem plays. It's really interesting. I that's a good thought. That's a good thought. Texas pounded Oklahoma. Holy cow, is Oklahoma missing Jeff Lebby or what? Jeff Lebby just torched Georgia secondary. I know we talked about Georgia secondary not looking good the last couple weeks, but they just torched them. All right, with Michael Van Buren and the Bozos, right? Like literally. Now you got some good. You got some
Coleman, that UTEP
yeah,
transfer. There's some
yeah.
talent there.
Kelly Akari, yeah. You got some guys, but man, it's Oklahoma team. And I was surprised that Jackson Arnold didn't come out there in the second half. Were you?
I was kind of waiting because, and I get that like his strength is his arm, his right arm, right? And you don't have the receivers in healthy to be able to take advantage of anything Texas could give you. So I can see where you thought, but they must really, really believe that the rest of the way, right? Michael Hawkins gives them the best chance to win football games, because if they did not, we're not totally convinced of that. Why not throw back Jackson Arnold? It sounds like he's doing everything right behind the scenes. It sounds like he's still staying engaged and still ready to go out there. I don't know. I was not impressed with Hawkins. I know he didn't have an easy job or easy situation around him. And obviously, if you go down those 18 points right there at halftime, like it's going to be tough. And that's just not where he's at as a passer right now, to be able to sit back in the pocket, withstand the pass rush of Texas, and throw a good ball consistently. I was impressed with Texas, though, right? Oklahoma came out and you saw their defensive game plan, their offensive game plan. They were throwing wrinkles here and there, and they were just throwing everything at Texas. And credit to Texas for staying calm and battling, withstanding the storm, getting a big stop here and there as they were losing the field position battle. And all of a sudden, this is what great teams do. Oklahoma showed one weakness, and boom, Texas just jumped on them, and they did not look back. Very impressed. Very impressed with Texas. I know it wasn't pretty in that first half or for all the entire game, but it's also Red River. Like, it's not going to be pretty. And I thought Wisner ran the ball well. He was physical. Blue ran the ball physical. Right? These are good athletes, good defenders that Oklahoma's trotting out there that were bouncing off of these running backs. And obviously, Wingo and Golden made some big plays. Hopefully, Isaiah Bond is healthy. Didn't really get an update on that, so we'll see what happens because they need him going forward. Silas Bolden had a huge hustle play, which was awesome. And obviously his punt return, aspects what he can bring for you. And then the tight end, Gunnar Helms, kind of a revolution for them. Obviously losing Jatavian Sanders. A lot of people looked at the Alabama transfer to come in and pick up where he left off, but Gunnar Helms is awesome. So yeah, super, super impressed with Texas. Super impressed with what they did. And obviously Oklahoma has a lot of things to work on. They just got beat.
So do you think, because also at halftime, I don't know if it was like going into halftime, he was getting interviewed, but he basically was like, "No, we're like." He was asked like, "Oh, we're gonna see Jackson Arnold in the second half." He's like, "No, we're Hawkins is our guy." You think Jackson Arnold's had conversations with coaches where he wants to shut it down so he can keep that red shirt?
I don't listen. I was driving for some of that day. I had to get back here. I had an interview yesterday, on Friday. So when I was watching Kirk Herbstreit and Fowler, I don't know if it was Herbstreit or Fowler or the talk radio host that I was listening to, or the radio host, the play-by-play guy I was listening to. One of them said that he's been doing. The coaching staff, everyone they talked to in Oklahoma was still talking very highly of Jackson Arnold as a person. Right. I don't know if that would really be the case if he was to shut it down and to redshirt. I think he redshirted last year though, right? So it's not like he can, or did he play? I'm gonna look that up real quick because that
redshirted actually. Now that I think about it, but I mean, look, the NIL opportunities for him if he does transfer are still tremendous. So there is still an incentive, I guess, to shut down, sort of. But I don't know. Just my tinfoil hat. Just my tinfoil hat. I don't actually believe that's what Jackson Arnold did, right? So I don't want my words get misconstrued, like thinking that I think that. I just think it's an interesting talking point because he was so quick to be like, no, we're not putting Jackson Arnold, and then they didn't put in Jackson Arnold, and it's like, okay, well, considering that you're down however many points and your true freshman quarterback is just absolutely getting obliterated, wouldn't it be nice, instead of ruining your freshman quarterback's complete confidence, maybe you give this other young guy on the team reps as well. So I don't know.
And he got benched because he was turning the ball over, right? And especially at the end of the first half. And he kept August had the fumbles and he had the others. And so it's like, what's going on here? That's where I think there is a serious conviction on that staff that thinks Hawkins is the guy going forward, and it's not Arnold. I know Arnold hasn't looked great this year, but very shocked. Very shocked. Obviously, I don't think it mattered. I don't think the game would have been closer. It wouldn't have really changed it, but it's more about Oklahoma going forward. And you got a South Carolina team next week that talk about pinning their ears back and getting after quarterback. And obviously, with the lack of receivers, right, it does favor a guy who is able to create on his own with his legs, right, and to give you some kind of dynamic in the running game. But still, just very interesting. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. I don't know.
So moving forward, Oklahoma still has a brutal schedule. Texas still has all their goals ahead of them. Tough remaining opponents on their schedule. Georgia next week. Vanderbilt.
Yes!
Yes!
Oh, and by the way, at Arkansas too.
That's scary.
Like anyone going into Arkansas is not loving is not gonna love that. I absolutely chalk that up. And especially if they're fighting hard right now for Pittman and Bobby P.
Yeah, I agree with you. Also, too, for the South Carolina Oklahoma game, I'm just gonna let everyone know I already took the under in that game.
Whatever. It's like Iowa, Minnesota. It's the Naval Academy games.
41.5. Now here's where it goes wrong though.
Turnovers.
And it could still happen, but I
think these coaches know they can't turn the ball over.
In the range of outcomes, I think those turnovers happen, further out in that deviation. So I think it's more likely than not that this thing is under 17-10, 17-13.
What's the line? Is it 30 something?
41.5.
Oh, just under 20s? Oh, maybe.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying. Just
listen,
out there.
Here's what I'll say this. If it announced today, Jackson Arnold's the starter, does that make you a little bit more nervous?
I don't know.
Yeah, I think yes. Turnovers, potential big plays through the air.
But Jackson Arnold, neither quarterback has done well under pressure this season. Neither quarterback.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think the line would move that much. Actually, I don't think the odds makers would change their odds, but I think people would move money around depending on that. But I think what did that total open at?
It is a shame, though. I will say
41.5 is I think the number. So up. That'll be my best bet. So people watching the show are getting rewarded. So
I will say it's a shame, real quick. Last thing here on this game, that Oklahoma is not healthy. I do not think we are seeing the best of Oklahoma this year. It's a shame that they're coming in the SEC, and I think they really could have given a lot of teams trouble this year if they were completely healthy. And obviously playing well offensively, not happening right now. It's a good change with some guys coming back, with maybe clicking. Seth Luttrell gets in his bag, whatever it may be. But I'm a little disappointed in Oklahoma, but also I just little bit sad that they aren't fully healthy. It's a shame that they really aren't able to compete. It's not really fair, if that makes sense.
Penn State came back, played from behind, what they're not designed to do. And I think we talked about it too. We might have talked about it in our preview. A team that's not really designed to come from behind. And guess what? They did it. USC, once again, blew another close game. It's been a tough year for USC. You had the big win against LSU, but then after that, it's kind of been sledding downhill from there. Just one possession game after one possession game, you are dropping.
You'd almost rather switch that LSU game as a loss with like a Penn State or Minnesota with a win, because I do think that win inflated expectations and like severely increased what we thought of USC and their chances. And I fell victim to that too, absolutely. But also, they've lost 3 really close games. This is a team that lost a lot from last year. This is a team that is changing who they are defensively and identity-wise. There's going to be growing pains, and you're seeing that in the margins and just a little bit here and there. Now, this game, absolutely winnable, right? There is no reason you should give up 24 points in the second half to Penn State at home while you are up and playing well. You ran the ball well, right? Almost, 7 yards per carry, almost 8 yards per carry. Now, Tyler Warren was a monster, and he made big-time catches. We saw that.
Yeah.
He was incredible.
He was
and so that just happens. And that's major college football. Like, some players are just going to make plays, and you're going to lose games because of that. Now, however, for USC, would a guy like Eric Gentry be able to maybe help cover a guy like Tyler Warren? Would he have been a big difference in this game? I don't know, but I do think he could have helped potentially. But if you told me that Penn State's running backs are going to run for well under 100 yards, Miller Moss is going to play efficient football, you're going to run for almost 7-8 yards per carry, yeah, I would have felt really good about USC. There's a lot of ways to lose this game. That would not have been one that I thought. Drew Lar, 30 for 43, 391, 2 touchdowns, and overcoming 3 interceptions. Yeah, what can you say? At James Franklin, we talked about him in big games, struggling to win these games. This was huge for him. I know USC, it hurts because you're at home. It hurts because the last couple of weeks. I get that. But I do think Penn State may be a little bit more desperate for this win in James Franklin, if that makes sense.
No, I agree. 100%. It's, dude, before people think I'm an idiot, all right, I also had a Rondé Gadsden, okay? I last second swapped Rondé Gadsden for Tyler Warren and lost my college fantasy football game for it.
No best ball?
It's not best ball, so that hurt a lot. That hurt a lot. Yeah, he is
45 fantasy points.
37. Half PPR.
Half PPR. Gotcha.
So, yeah, that one hurt. That one hurt a lot. So considering Rondé Gadsden, well, okay, gained 10 points. For tight end in college football, it's not bad. But man.
It's a pretty good stack you have there with Gadsden and Warren.
No, it's a great stack that I have there. I mean, I think everyone else is kind of like fishing for tight ends, and I'm like, who do I start? It's like, what do I do with this? I think I just got to go with Warren moving forward. He's just been way more efficient than. But they both have buys next week. So sad.
Someone didn't check the bye week when they were drafting.
So sad. Well, I also have Lake McCree for USC, but he's hurt.
So, ooh, that was a good pick. By the way, that's a good pick.
Okay, not to get into this. All right, fantasy football stuff. What's the pulse of the USC fan base right now in regards to Lincoln Riley? What are these fans thinking?
To be honest, I don't know. There's been so much cry from Tuscaloosa that I haven't even heard about Lincoln Riley too much. I don't know. And I think as a guy outside of that program and coming in from 10,000-foot view, right, I think it is patience. I think there are signs of things coming together. I think there are things that he's doing that he did not do early in his career at Oklahoma nor at USC that he's doing here. It's going to take a while. By the way, look at Ryan Day. Look at his record against top 5 football teams, right? Not very good. And they're also
Yeah.
their top 5 teams. Like Penn State was number 4. This is a very good football team. They played really well. They had a 5-star quarterback, Drew Allar, that made big time throws. They had Tyler Warren, top 60 NFL pick, put on a show. So like that happens. You were up big. You had a chance to win that game. Not up big. You're up 14 points. I don't know. I'm not ready to sell on Lincoln Riley at all yet. I do think high school recruiting has to get a little bit better. I do think their schedule right now is a ton of winnable football games. But here's the deal. If you're traveling across country to Maryland, you're traveling across country, right? I guess not really across country, but way up north to Washington. Like there's a couple more games where you got to go and see how that fatigue gets there. But you should end your season pretty damn hot, right? 8 wins should be where you're at least.
Yep.
And I think if you told, by the way, their over and win total was 7.5. So they're going to be hovering right around that 7, 8, 9 win mark there. Let's kind of step back. I think that LSU game really put too crazy expectations, and myself included, I'm at fault for that, on this USC team. They lost a couple close games against physical football teams, resilient football teams. What can you do?
What can you do?
Now, by the way, you're USC. Like you should be able to. What you can do is recruit better, have better talent. Be able to finish those football games. It's exactly what you can do. My point is, it's like they're not getting blown out. There's not like crazy culture issue. There's not like these obvious issues on one side of the football. It's just they're getting better and better. They're gonna figure it out. It's not gonna take overnight. That's just gonna boom flip. And every week you're gonna play this elite brand of football that we saw maybe in week 1. Yeah.
It's tough, but we'll move on though. We'll talk about, because we do got to speed this up. Ohio State, Oregon. What a great football game. Honestly, from start to finish, Dylan Gabriel blew my mind how well he played. And you know what? You said it first. You're like, well, they probably got to get production from Evan Stewart, right? I mean, to win this football game. And boy, did they. Evan Stewart, when he plays against, or I'm going to call Denzel Burke an elite corner. That's what we believe going into the game. But, man, might have to reevaluate some things there. Don't want to overreact, but, man, Evan Stewart was awesome. Okay, and he brought in that extra juice that you exactly thought that you went in the transfer portal and got Evan Stewart. He was awesome. If he continues to play like that, you have Ferguson, Johnson. I mean, really nice. And Jordan James, by the way, I was unbelievably impressed with how hard he ran. And the offensive line for Oregon, credit to that offensive line who had struggled at times in certain games this season. Played lights out, I thought. Dylan Gabriel, who I thought was going to absolutely crumble under the pressure that he was going to get, once again rises up to beat Ohio State at home. It was really nice. Now, the whole Will Howard thing, if you're out there and you're like, Ohio State can't win a national championship with Will Howard, you're a bozo. I'm sorry.
Delete your Twitter.
Your Twitter. Will Howard is a good quarterback, and Ohio State is plenty talented to win any game that they're in with Will Howard at quarterback. Sure, that last play was interesting, to say the least.
But by the way, like, they were well in the field goal range, and then Jeremiah Smith maybe pushed off, maybe didn't. He probably did. But true freshman got a little handsy, a little excited, tried to get away with something, and then kicked him out of field goal range. Like, they were well on their way to having a really good chip shot field goal to win the football game. And a totally different conversation about Will Howard being this hero. He let him down on the road, backs against the wall.
Wouldn't be doing that. Like, all
even
this
though
stuff.
He did against Notre Dame, he just didn't against Michigan. But yeah,
that's true.
Here's what I'll say too about that. Like, you brought in Quinshon Judkins, you brought in Chip Kelly, and part of the reason you brought in Will Howard too was to run the football, and you did not. Outside of Trevon Henderson making a big time play and showing that burst and that crazy big play speed that only he has, really. And outside of that, you did not run the ball well, consistently at all. Will Howard, Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Ibuka, these guys, those were your offenses. G. Scott had a couple big catches, but those were your offenses, and it was Will Howard keeping that game. And you said it, man, more so giving credit to Oregon, Dylan Gabriel, Jordan James Stewart, Tez Johnson, a big catch, right? They deserve a ton of credit, but the other side here is on Ohio State defensively. lot more concerning with all the talent you bring in. That secondary, how loaded they are, versatile, the athleticism at linebacker, the pass rushers you have on the D line, and you kind of got shredded at times, like really shredded at times. So, like, to me, that's a lot more concerning than being worried about Will Howard, taking a knee with a half a second to go and not sliding one step previous and being able to call timeout, potentially kicking a field goal. Yeah, he won't do that again. He'll be fine. Ohio State, by the way, if they want to win a title, their defense has to play better. It's not about their offense.
Yeah, and
That's my
I thought this
soapbox.
defense was really good. I think it still is really good. I think maybe we just got a little bit out coached there, and their secondary got beat. They put guys on an island against really talented receivers. We had our preview episode in the season. We talked about best position groups in college football. That Oregon Ducks wide receiver room, and boy, did they show it, man. Boy, did they show it. Very impressed with Dylan Gabriel. He jumps up. I think he's plus 380 in some places to win the Heisman. Yeah, I mean, I guess after that game, I'm sure that's probably the only Oregon game Heisman voters have watched all season. So I would imagine that's why he's up there at plus 380. We'll see if he continues to play like that. I think he can. I think he can with those weapons and that offensive line. That defense, came up big when it needed to. Credit to Oregon this game, man. Credit to Oregon. Did not think that. I think we both picked Ohio State in this game.
They were on my best bets.
Yep. Credit to Oregon.
Yeah, Eugene was lit and on fire real quick here. And then also, like you said, the offensive game plan Oregon had. Will Stein, if he's not already, he is well on his way to an offensive coordinator or to a head coaching job. We talked about that back in August. That still holds true today. And I will say, too, like, the way Oregon had to handle missing that extra point and having it blocked or the bad snap and whatever happened, right? And they ran it back for a little bit. Like, that kind of put them behind the 8 ball in these certain things. And then you miss a field goal. And it's like, it could have been potentially worse for Oregon or easier for Oregon, right? Or he could have been up 4 or 5 potentially, in that that last drive there. So it could have been a lot different, but regardless, super impressed with, Oregon and everything they did, especially in that fourth quarter.
Ole Miss kind of blew it on the road against LSU. Kind of blew it there. Yeah. You give up a touchdown drive for them to tie the football game. Kind of throttled it down there. 30 seconds to go. Take it to overtime. And just horrible possession that you had there. Sure, Caden Davis made the field goal, the 57-yard field goal or whatever it was. But yeah, Jackson Dart, I was also pissed because I had his over passing yards. And he needs 8 passing yards in overtime. Actually needed 8 passing yards in that last possession and overtime. Don't even think he completed a pass. So that's tough. Yeah, Ole Miss, after you pushed in all of your chips this season, you already have 2 losses in the SEC, and it's not even November yet. So pretty interesting look right there. Credit to LSU. Credit to Garrett Nussmeier, man. Came up big time. Kyron Lacey also hyperextending his knee, coming back in the game like a couple plays later. And then, like, the hyperextension, I'm like, oh, geez. Oh, no.
I thought it was,
no. And then comes back in the game, plays unreal the rest of the game, and then has a game-winning touchdown. Unreal from Kyron Lacey. Unreal.
He is a dog.
He's a dog, man. He's a dog. So is Garrett Nuss. Nuss bus.
Yeah, I will say that Nussmeier, that was like... That was one of the most like Nussmeier stat lines that we've seen, right? Was it 22 of 51, 337 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions.
When it mattered, though. When it mattered, he was there.
When it mattered. And by the way, he threw some lasers, some absolute beautiful balls that were dropped, right? He put some – it could have been a lot better for them. But on the other hand here, I still think Ole Miss probably outplayed them. I mean, you saw them miss field goals. You saw the different things that they did. They absolutely – absolutely – could have won that football game. It should have won the football game on the road at Death Valley. This is where that Kentucky game kills you. Because this loss, it's not a bad loss at all. You can very, very easily come back from it, right? You played Georgia close or you beat Georgia, whatever it may be. you're sitting there pretty for the playoffs. But now all of a sudden, zero margin for error, right? You have to sit there and look good doing it. You need some help potentially with the way you're standing right there back at 18. Now we'll see what happens when the first set of college football playoff, rankings come out. But yeah, for a game that you probably outplayed LSU on the road in Death Valley, you would have loved to come away with that win. But credit LSU, man. I will say, I know Ole Miss has a better front seven than I think people are used to seeing from them. And you didn't run the ball with Durham and Josh Williams. But is that split 51 passing attempts, 24 rushing attempts? Is that sustainable
No, it's
for
not.
LSU? And it could have been worse with some dropbacks that Nussmeier had and whatnot. But that's the concerning part. Is LSU? Yes. By the way, they could be 6-0 if they didn't blow that game. Not blow that game. They didn't lose that game to LSU
They could have won that, or they could have won that game against USC. They definitely could have. They were
because
what,
just
like they turned the ball over on downs 3 times and had an interception with a chance to.
exactly. Now here's what I'll say too on the Ole Miss side. Yes, Trey Harris is a monster. We know that he was a ball. I compared him to like 80 to 90% of what Roma Dunze is, and I feel pretty good about that. That's how high I think of Roma Dunze and Trey Harris. But Caden Prescorn, he's a difference maker. He's a matchup nightmare. He played 33 snaps last night. Where was he? Right?
Yeah.
One catch against this LSU team, who, by the way, missing some athletes there in that second and third levels that potentially could be blocked, could be matched up against Prescorn. And I'm not going to question Lane Kiffin offensively. I'm not going to question his scheme and his play calling, whatever. But I would wonder if he could do it over again. And would Prescorn have been a difference there on a certain play, certain drives that you didn't score, you didn't punch it in, or maybe you'd settle for a field goal, end up missing that. So we'll see. I will say though, you get the ball, so you miss a field goal, and we know Lane Kiffin is who he is, and he's going to be aggressive. He's going to be this, and this. You get the ball on LSU's 13-yard line after an interception there, after you miss a field goal. So boom, 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 sudden change happens, and all of a sudden it's 4th and goal at the 4-yard line. It's not even like the 1-yard line. So even if you get that, you're not guaranteed to score. 0-0 at Death Valley. It's not like this is a crazy talent gap, right, anymore for LSU. Kick the field goal. I know you just missed a field goal, right? Kick the field goal. Get your confidence back in Caden Davis, right? Go up 3-0. And then, by the way, you would be up 13-0, which I think is a lot different football game than 10-0. So we'll see. I'm sure he would love to have it back because of the other hindsight's 2020, blah, blah, blah. I get that. But are we going to get to a spot where we're talking about Lane Kiffin's in-game coaching decisions, not his scheme, not his play calling, but his coaching decisions in terms of when and when not to go for it? Is that could be a team that's holding Ole Miss back in these big football games?
I don't know.
Overreaction is overreaction.
Maybe. I think they got some games left on the schedule that will let them determine. I think Lane Kiffin has risen to the occasion more times than not, and I think his coaching and play calling has elevated the team to win games that maybe they didn't normally in the past. So I'm not gonna throw him under the bus just after this loss, to be honest.
No, and his play calling, his scheme, everything incredible. One of the best in college football. I get that, but in terms of like a lot of times, man, it's 4th down, and they go for these early in football games, and sometimes it comes back to bite you. But that's also who he is, and his team probably fires him up that they're going for it. I'm not a head football coach in the SEC, so they don't pay me to make that decision. So I just think it was. I wonder if that game turned out differently. That's all I'm trying to say.
West Virginia having the coal miner uniforms, hosting Iowa State, just a huge underwhelming performance from West Virginia. And I think Iowa State played well. I think defensively, I was impressed with Iowa State for sure. And I think offensively, at times, they moved the football all right. Again, and Iowa State is undefeated, and are they top 10 in the AP poll? Top 12?
I'll double check right now. They were
Even
11
after
last
watching
week.
this game, I know they went on the road against a frisky West Virginia team, and they had the coal miner unis, and the vibes were high. The place was loud. It was bumping. I'm still not super impressed with Iowa State so far this season. Maybe I'm just an absolute hater. Maybe I'm just a hater. Maybe I'm totally naive. Maybe I'm totally blind. Maybe I'm stupid. And I think you feel differently about Iowa State, right? What are your thoughts about Iowa State coming out of this game?
I thought it was impressive. I mean, obviously West Virginia was underwhelming, but their defense I thought played well, and
Did.
Jaheim White and Donaldson could not get going. And
Yes.
the broadcast was talking about it. Like Garrett Green is your top option running the ball and throwing the ball. Too much is, and we love Garrett Green. You love Garrett Green.
Sometimes.
Too
Jeez
much is that's my
Louise.
everything is good in moderation. Garrett Green is great in moderation. Like it should not be so heavily put on his shoulders to beat a
No.
top 10 football team. Carson Hansen was awesome. Don't know what's going on there in that backfield with Jalen Jackson, with Abu Sama. I don't, but I don't care. As long as it's productive and they commit to running the ball. I talked about this where we've seen Iowa State with how good Higgins and Noel, Eli Green's playing well too now, Benjamin Brahma, the tight. Like sometimes you get a little bit pass happy and you're like, we got one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. We're going to ride these guys. But sometimes, especially going on the road, teams that are maybe inferior to you right now, and you lose sight of running the ball. They did a great job. Great game plan. 43 rushing attempts to 26 passing attempts. That's exactly where you want to be. They closed out West Virginia in that fourth quarter. That was super impressive. Yeah, I mean, what's not to like right now? What's not to like for for Iowa State now? On the other hand here, like I said, with Garrett Green, like they were driving in that late in that third quarter,
Multiple
you
times.
you throw that interception, that kills you. That kills you. And the next drive, you throw that interception, and that's obviously where Iowa State puts you away. But it happen, when you put too much on Garrett Green, you can't run the ball early in the football game. That's going to happen, and unfortunately, it does. There was a stat last night. I think it was like anytime Garrett Green has more than 30 passing attempts, he like always throws 2 interceptions or whatever it may be. I think that was the line.
That is a
Wild,
crazy stat.
wild. So
Iowa State's run defense impressed me. If you want me to look at something in this game, be like, okay, this is something that Iowa State can take moving forward and be like, all right, if they apply this in every single week, they could be a really good football team. That
starting
run
next week.
defense, starting next week, that run defense right there against West Virginia, that effort was top tier. All right, that absolutely was. And you have an offense that has enough, I'm going to say enough, to make stuff happen and score some points. I still haven't been that impressed with the offense this season. The defense is what's been really nice for me that I've liked. Yeah, moving forward, the teams that are going to run the ball on you, UCF is going to try to run the ball on you. Texas Tech is going to try to run the ball on you. Kansas is going to try to run the ball on you. Cincy's going to try to run the ball on you. Utah is going to try to run the ball on you. Kansas State's going to try to run the ball. Like every single team you play the rest of the year is going to try to run the ball on you. And if you could take this effort and transfer this effort into, because I haven't been that impressed with Iowa State's run. The Iowa game is a little bit different. Iowa's been running the ball well against kind of everyone this year, so I'm not going to I'll take that with a bit of a grain of salt right there. But if they can put that effort in their run defense and continue to do that in every single game the rest of the season, yeah, there's no reason that this team can't go undefeated or make something special of this season. I worry in a game, I don't know, like against Texas Tech, if Texas Tech is putting up points, are you yourselves able to put up points? And I know they did last year, and they did it in the Baylor game, I guess, late, but you've relied a lot on nice field position from turnovers. You didn't look great offensively against Houston. You didn't look great against Iowa offensively, which I guess Iowa does have pretty decent defense, but there's still a lot to improve here. But this is probably one of Matt Campbell's better teams, though, that he's had. I'm willing to say that for sure. Definitely.
Well, and like you don't have Texas and OU in your conference. Like Utah's not playing great. It's like it seems a lot more exciting, I think, for Iowa State. Big win.
Yeah. So, do you think they're the front runners to win the Big 12 right now? Are they your front runners to win the Big 12?
Let's just say the standings hold, and so they have to play Texas Tech and BYU and Kansas State, right? Those are the top 4 in the Big 12. Those 4 there, and Iowa has Texas Tech and Kansas State on their schedule, and then a potential matchup with BYU in the championship. If I had to pick one, yes, just because I trust their offense a little bit more than BYU potentially. However, I do not want to pick one right now. I think so much is going to change, and I know that's the easy way out, but I think we're going to learn a lot. People got to stay healthy. Like the depth in the Big 12 is not. When I say depth, I mean like team depth, positional depth for each team is not the same as it is potentially in the SEC and Big 10. and even certain teams in the ACC. So like that's where certain things like have to change. How does attrition get to you? Who stays healthy? Who doesn't? Who's peaking at the right time? So yeah, I right now Iowa State, you're doing your job. 6-0. You've looked good most of the year outside of one half against Iowa. You know, honestly, look good. Like you've done your job, right? And you've kind of handled things. So why not? Why not Iowa State continue to climb the ranks?
They are the favorites right now. Texas Tech is plus 900, by the way, to win the Big 12. Let me point you, by the way, to the rest of Texas Tech schedule. Not that we should be talking about Texas Tech in this Iowa State recap. Baylor at home, TCU on the road. Then you get Iowa State on the road, right? That's the big one you got to circle. And then after that, Colorado at home, Oklahoma State on the road, West Virginia at home. Plus 900, by the way.
Now, listen, I think it's irresponsible to put any future on the Big 12. Any future right now.
Is it, though?
That's good value. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's not good value.
I think it's irresponsible to take Iowa State plus 160.
Well, yeah,
that's irresponsible.
That's crazy. But yeah. Okay, I'm ready. Yeah, that's good.
Kansas State, Colorado. Speaking of the Big 12, Kansas State. I thought this was a really good effort from Colorado. By the way, without Travis Hunter, they came back in that football game and almost won it.
Took the lead.
I credit Avery Johnson orchestrating that last drive. Jace Brown continues to be a really nice receiver, really nice option for them. I thought it was going to be, Keegan Johnson over there, the transfer from Iowa. That was going to be really good. But it turns out Jace Brown was another option. It was really nice. DJ Giddens was a monster once again. Yeah, moving forward, it's tough for Colorado. I think Shedeur Sanders was awesome. I think they can still accomplish a lot of stuff this season, go to a bowl game, whatnot. Kansas State, their eyes for sure on the schedule ahead of them. But yeah, I mean, I was impressed with Avery Johnson's ability to, one, he got hurt in that game, by the way, came back, and orchestrated that drive to win a football game with his arm.
Yep.
I was very impressed.
Most of his work was on with his arm. DJ Giddens looked fantastic. Like you said, Jace Brown is really coming in and knew his own, which is big time for them. Yeah, I was impressed with the resilience of both teams. Right, Kansas State obviously after blowing that lead, having the interception, going down a score, and then boom, boom, boom. 51 seconds later, you are in the end zone and having to go out there and stop Shedeur Sanders, who was humming. Right, had the ball 2:15. He was playing great football in that second half. That interception was tough. Right. That was a time he was really inaccurate on that ball as you were driving after a big, big play to Marion Miller, who, by the way, I hope he's healthy because he's really coming in his own. And they need him if they are going to have these injuries at the wide receiver position. We talked about them being super deep at that position. Yes. And that was part of the reason why we love that wide receiver room. Miller was part of that depth, by the way. But it's also nice to have your top end guys like Hunter and Horn for sure. Yeah, I mean, I was kind of hoping this game would be a blowout so I could go to bed. Once Shedeur threw that pick, I was like, okay, maybe I can go to bed here. I'll watch one more Kansas State drive, and then they went 3 and out. And then Colorado went down and scored, and then they topped the ball on 4th down, and then they went down and scored, and then boom, it was pretty impressive. It was pretty impressive. I gotta love that. Colorado's going to give teams a lot of fits. Kansas State is not perfect. They're not flawless at all, but they are getting better and better. And I think with Avery Johnson, by the way, a young quarterback, it's going to find himself. They're going to get used to him. New offensive coordinator coming in, or same staff, but new offensive coordinator. Like they're just getting better, and that's what good coaching teams do. Right after, and by the way, that BYU loss, while it was ugly and it did get bad in that second half, it's a pretty good football team you probably lost to there. So it's not doom and gloom for Kansas State.
Seriously, I mean, there was a time when I was taking BYU and our dirty dogs against SMU. They were 13, 12-point underdogs to SMU.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about BYU as a contender for the Big 12 championship. How time flies. So, yeah, I feel better about both these teams moving forward. This is one of those games where, Colorado's facing adversity. Kansas State faced adversity. I think they both answered the call, but someone had to win, and that someone was Kansas State.
Yes, sometimes it's not a zero-sum game. Sometimes you can learn a lot from both teams.
that's going to be it for our Week 7 recap. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you want to be sticking around, first of all, you can like the video if you like the content. Second of all, you can subscribe. We just hit over 500 subs a couple weeks back, so we appreciate all the support that we've been getting these last couple weeks. We'll be giving our previews probably in the next couple days for the upcoming week. We'll have our best bets. We'll have our dirty dogs, which you guys know, if your team's on that list, it could be in trouble. And, of course, we'll have our 8 games that we choose to preview. If you want us to preview a particular game, just let us know in the comments. Or send us an email at theredshirtsophomore@gmail.com. You can DM us on Twitter at theredshirtsoph. Yeah, we love interacting with you guys, so please get active in our comment section. We love talking ball all the time. We'll respond. We'll be there. And we'll be there next week. So hope to see you guys as well. CD, anything on the way out? Oh, CD, the mute button got you.
There's some wind. Brutal, man, brutal. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you guys are enjoying the season as much as we are. And yeah.
Alrighty, we'll see y'all in the next one.